Okay, so we're here. Hilchos Lashon Horah Klal test. Get this off the screen. Um, and we're learning here Hilchos Avak Lashon Horah, right? Statements that are not necessarily outright Lashon Horah, but they can cause Lashon Horah. Yesterday we learned even if you praise someone, it can be called Avak Lashon Horah. If you praise to the wrong person, so it's going to cause that person, if the guy doesn't like the person you're praising, to let you know a few things about him, and that wouldn't be so good. So therefore, now we're saying over here in Halacha Gimel, I'm Moshe.
Oh, hello.
Gam yesh lo la'odem izom l'shabetz chaveru b'shevach haboli dehefset. Says you also have to be careful. Praise someone if that praise is going to cause him ultimately a loss. Says the Chofetz gives us an example. Like a guest, you went to someone's house. This could be applicable in a yeshiva bacha for sure. You went to someone's house and it was great, the food. Now you start telling every single person you know, right, about this guy. The person he publicizes to everybody. It's Hashem Balabais, how the Balabais did him this tremendous favor. Plus, our the Torah thought of Harbe and how the Balabais went out of his way to make him comfortable, etc. Okay, he's there. Because by doing that, you slack to a noshim reiki, empty type of people. Yisrael base Balabais, so we'll go there. The was minor, and they'll eat him out of his house. So you're praising him, but you're causing him ultimately. That's also a Avak Lashon Horah. While in Kazeh Nemar about Yeshua, a little quieter. The Al in Kazeh Nemar Mavarach Eo B'Kol Gogo Baboiker Hashkem Klal Techosher. A plastic in this way. You praise someone in a loud voice in the morning. It will be considered Klal Techosher like. When we say yesh lomoid, so from here we could also learn do what didn't refer nisa kalvome is covered. Let's say someone gave you a loan. When Faso goes go to Rosa and they start telling people what a great guy this guy is, gives out loans. Okay, they said what so he says because what many times will happen, she's capsule of anoshim, right? So, Ganoven basically, people will go over to the guy and take loans. And he actually show an Asram, and the guy now is in a bad position, and he can't say no, right? But ultimately, what will happen is that they're not going to pay it back. So therefore, this is also not in the rule of Avak Lashon Horah, even though you're praising the person. But ultimately, person has to be careful with what he says. Yeah. He shouldn't be suspected. Maybe ask me, in other words, a person has to be careful what he says, that even if he's not really saying Lashon Hara, people shouldn't think that he is saying Lashon Hara. Because if he does that, what's going to happen? Why is it Avak Lashon Hara? Because they'll say about him that he speaks Lashon Hara. Now, what he says here on the bottom, Mashal Sacharti, Durabe Planya. He had mentioned earlier in the Sefer, which is really should be the classic Avak Lashon Hara. That someone's asking, where can I get a fire? Where can I get a light? I need some fire, right? And you respond by saying, well, if you go to that guy's house, they're always cooking. So there should be a fire there, right? Avak Av Shekem Kasat Rebbe Kal Beis says, even though in Kal Beis I did write it as Avak Lashon Hara. When Mekari my Rashbam Baba Basra, which I Tshuva Bnei Yoina, said Kirisi Achach with Divrei Hagoyis Maimini per exam Rovsta Deos. With Divrei Hasma Gamash Medrem do Lashon Hara Gemura. This is even though early in the Sefer I wrote it as Avak Lashon Hara. The reason I'm not using it as an example here is because later on I saw in some of the poskim that they categorize it as absolute Lashon Hara, not Avak Lashon Hara. So even though he didn't change what he wrote there, because there is a basis in Rishonim calling it Avak Lashon Hara, but there's also Rishonim that say it's not Avak Lashon Hara, but it's Mamash Lashon Hara, and therefore at this point the Chavetz Chaim doesn't give it as an example. I mean, either way, it's also. You're not allowed to say Avak Lashon Hara either. The only question was, why didn't he write it here? So he tells you why he didn't write it here. Halacha Daled. Also, Lodur B'Shkunas Bali Lashon Hara. This is a powerful thing. You're not allowed to live. If it's a community that they're not careful for Lashon Hara, they all speak Lashon Hara, you're not allowed to live there. Postgame, they should be more of the Shmoyah Devreim, and certainly to go sit, socialize with them, and listen to what they have to say. Even my intent is not to be makabel what they're saying. Since you're going to listen, it's also he says, and if you know, from about one of your Talmidim, so you gotta push that Talmud away. If you know that if you rebuke him, it won't help, so then you have to push him away. He says, if it happens, I got stuck. I'm on a plane, right? And they gave me a seat, and all the people around me are schmoozing and talking Lashon Hara. So if he feels that if he rebukes them, it'll work, it'll help. So then he has to rebuke them. Then even if he assesses the situation that his rebuke won't help, that cause them to stop speaking. But it won't make anything worse. So just continue what they're doing. Now, you're also not allowed to be quiet. Because if you don't say anything, they might say about you that he's with us. He's part of the gang. He's listening to what I have to say. So mitzad that you're mechuyev to rebuke them. Unless you feel that if you rebuke them, it's going to generate more lashon. Then you're not mechuyev. They'll think that he's agreeing with what they're saying. Also, there's an obligation to rebuke them. It's the covenant of the person who really didn't, the tzaddik that they're speaking about. They know nothing. Isn't this one of the reasons why you have to leave? You have to, separate yourself from a group of Rishonim. Because you'll be punished when you listen to the words, and you'll be tired. You just after a while, one time you'll tell them it's wrong, twice, and afterwards you'll stop. And if you stop, then it looks like you're admitting and agreeing to their words, and therefore you're obligated to leave. Now, earlier I had spoken. I remember where. What happens if I can't leave? What do I have to do? So he said, you can't. I do remember. He says, you can't show any expression of agreement, preferably to show that you're upset about what they're saying. Okay, so we'll stop here. There is a Haggah, so believe Neder, try to remember to do it on Sunday. Okay, but let's go now to Shmir Saloshan. So Loshan, we're on Perik Gimel now, Shar HaTvuna Perik Gimel. And he says here, the heading of this Perik Gimel was that to give some advices as far as Shmiras Haloshan. Oh, that was what we did this time. That's what we did yesterday. It's Chaf Gimel Kislev if you have the Sefer. If you started speaking with Reuven about Shimon, because you didn't know that Reuven doesn't like Shimon. And As you're speaking, you suddenly start getting the vibes. The Reuven really doesn't like Shimon, and soon he's going to start saying bad mouthing him, saying lashon hara. So if I'm stuck and have no way of ending the conversation and leaving, so you got to try to change the subject, at least to a subject that won't lend itself to lashon hara. Shekisishayim dibura yulokit al yidei zeh b'avoyin lashon hara. Or it could be that you started speaking and suddenly you realize that what you're saying is going to end up being lashon hara. Yatzer b'nafshay, so you have to strengthen yourself. Luchamim yitzray, to fight your yetzer. Lahavsik be'emtza, to stop what you were talking about right in the middle of the conversation. Yasir sadvarim and change the subject. Similar. It's just like if you're in middle of eating this delicious steak, and in middle you're like in mid bite. Also, someone tells you, that extra stinks. You can't eat that. That's treif. So bavadi amafsi take if you're what would you do? You would finish the sandwich. Oh, you would stop and you would spit out whatever was in your mouth already. Feel much of piv. What your customer say for your Tavash. And even if you're going to be embarrassed, you're sitting with a bunch of businessmen and you're invited to a business meal and you were told that the food's going to be really kosher, and then you're in the middle of eating and someone tells you, no, they blew it and it's treif what you're eating. So even if you have moments, you spit it all out and everyone's going to look at you like some nutcase, a bunch of, upper grade businessmen. It's of course what you would do. You wouldn't swallow the tray food. Amar Chazal, Mutiv Shikar Adam Shaitel Kayamim, and Chazal taught us, the Mishnah, it's preferable that you should be called a fool your whole life, or you're Rosh Hashanah, and not be considered Rosh even for one moment by Hashem. Because Rambam, the Sefer Shara Gemul, Shasha Achas Begehenna, Kosh Yertz Misur Ev Kol Yom, that one time, one shot in Gehenna is more painful than all the suffering that Eve went his whole life. So it's preferable that you should be considered a shaykh in this world and not do the Avera. You do a shahad misratza, yoisel this bias for this for Yishurim Koshem. Person would prefer to be embarrassed rather than suffer difficult Yisurim. And therefore it's preferable, even if you be embarrassed, just like you would stop eating that steak mid-bite and even embarrass yourself by spitting out while still in your mouth. Same thing is if you're catching yourself speaking Lashon Hara. So you can't allow the answer to say, okay, I'll look like a fool if I stop. Right? I got to finish what I'm saying. No, stop. And if you look like a fool, you look like a fool. All this is where I don't have a way correcting what I did. I've been dvarv nishmoyim. Says, but if people will listen to what I say, and I'm able to make peace between them. Oh, so no. Here he's talking where I hear someone saying lashon hara about another, right? So we said how you have to leave and you can't stay there. But if you feel that if you stay there and let the guy finish talking, you'll be able then to speak up and bring peace between him and the person he's speaking about, then certainly there's no Isa Lashon Hara there to listen to it because you're doing it for Toelas. And ends up being a mitzvah. You brought peace between two people. Okay,